Today on Adversity to Strength, I'm joined by Angie Biln, coach, mentor, and survivor who has turned her personal battles into a mission to help others transform their lives. Angie's story is rooted in resilience. She has faced adversity that tested her identity, her mindset, and her belief in herself. And from that struggle, she carved out a new path. Through her coaching, Angie empowers others to step out of fear, rewrite their stories, and embrace their strength they already hold within. Her work is all about practical transformation, helping people release old patterns, build confidence, and create the lives they truly want to live. In this episode, Angie shares the lessons she's learned along the way, the tools she uses to help her clients, and how anyone can turn their challenges into stepping stones towards growth and purpose. Angie, thanks so much for coming on the podcast. Great to see you again.
Thank you so much for having me today.
Thank you. Take us back to the beginning where your journey started,
Great question because it's always a complex journey, right?
as always.
Yeah. So where I'm at now, if I look back, there was a lot of struggles, a lot of challenges, a lot of signs, a lot of, messaging where it's like you could take different paths. But I think what I've learned is not to overlook what the signs are, right? And then to do that, you have to be able to kind of pinpoint and dissect what happened earlier on. So in my work of coaching and social work and inner child healing and all that, I've been through that therapy myself as well. So I was able to really reflect on the earlier years, which takes me back to, my teenage years, early 20s, adolescent years, right? So for me, I think I was never content as a teenager. I grew up in a very small town, immigrant parents, and I always felt like I just didn't fit in. I felt like, there's got to be more to this. Like, I don't want this just to be it. And then sometimes people
Yeah.
say, like, well, what do you mean? Like, well, if you're asking the why or what more, then really follow that, right? Trust your gut. Like, there's got to be more. So for me, it was like, I don't want to just follow the pattern and the paths that a lot of my family members and friends and, ancestors did, which is go to school, go to university, find a partner, get married, and that's it. Like, that's
Yeah.
amazing. And for people who really have that life and are fulfilled, that's amazing. For me, it was not enough. I always knew there was more, but I just didn't know how to tap into that. Now, obviously, where I'm at now in life, I'm able to tap into those powers, I guess you could say, or that intuition and really trust myself and follow that path. But back then, what happened is, like I said, growing up with low confidence, growing up with all these limiting beliefs and negative beliefs about myself that I can't do more, I can't expect more, I don't deserve love, I don't deserve a good life, all these things that were really deeply ingrained in me. And I would say that started around the age of 11 or 12. And I carried those.
A- Any particular reason for those limiting beliefs? Where do they come from age of 11?
Yeah, yeah. So I can specifically pinpoint back at that time, I would have been about grade 6 or 7, and it was due to bullying and racism. So I really, and it wasn't just me, it was like any minority person in that at that time was treated that way. But I really hung on to that. And what I did was I converted that limiting and negative belief into I'm not good enough. You know, this is it. Like I don't deserve anything better or more. And I unfortunately carried those beliefs into teenage years and then into my relationships, which now as I look back, I was attracting the same type of person into my life over and over, the
Yeah.
same friends, where that confidence really it's visible. And so long story short, moving on into my 20s, I did exactly what was expected of me. I finished university, I got a job, I found my partner, we got married. And in my head, I'm thinking, okay, life is great. It's all going to
Yeah.
work out. Right. And the thing is, though, if you haven't closed old wounds, if you haven't overcome trauma, and if you haven't really learned to process any of that stuff from the past, your adulthood is going to be just a bunch of triggers and then it's reactions and then negative coping mechanisms. And that's kind of what happened in my marriage. We were two people who just, obviously wanted a good life, but we couldn't do it. So early on, I would say that in my marriage, in my relationship, I saw the red flags, but I ignored them. I chose to turn a blind eye. And it was not a healthy relationship by any means, but I didn't have the courage to walk away at that point. I just thought, well, things will get better and this is what's expected of me. So let's just keep this going. One decade leads into like the second decade, and then it's like you have kids, and then it's, like just a domino effect. So your question was, how did I get to this point? So it was a lot of a lot of struggle amongst those years where I wasn't able to leave an unhealthy relationship. But what happened was, I got to a point where it was going to be like either my mental health was going to be, it was going to be like a crisis situation where I wouldn't be able to be a healthy parent anymore. So I had to make a choice. I said, okay, I can't keep doing this. This is not healthy. This is not working. Nobody in this family unit is happy right now. So I had to make a decision. And that was back in 2019 is when I kind of took that first step of separation. Yeah.
Was it an easy decision to make?
No, it was probably not probably, it was the hardest decision I've ever
Yeah.
made in my life, right? Because you have so much guilt, so much
Yeah.
shame. You really you feel like you're breaking up a family. You feel like you're the worst parent. You feel like you're destroying your children's lives. And I hear
Yeah.
this all the time from other women and other clients who say the same thing, right? It's that guilt. It makes it so hard to make that courageous decision, which is actually now looking back, it was the best decision because it allowed me to really figure out who I am and what I want in my life moving forward.
Yeah, even though it's the right decision doesn't mean it's an easy one, and especially when it
Exactly.
comes to relationships coming to an end like that. When did you start really discovering yourself? Was it after you'd been separated and then it was like, right, I can refocus on everything now?
Yeah, exactly. I think what happens is, and I'm only speaking from personal experience, is when you release some of that negative energy from your mind, body, soul, it allows obviously new space, new energy to kind of take place and come in, right? You absorb peace versus chaos. You absorb clarity versus confusion, right? So that takes time. It doesn't happen overnight, but when I was able to finally have the courage to take that step, I was able to actually think with clarity and actually get some proper sleep and actually live each day thinking, okay, what do I want to do moving forward? What do I want for myself and for my kids, And then it was a lot of reflection on my own values that I had avoided and suppressed for many years. So yeah, so it's almost like step work, right? Like you take one step forward, you think it's a baby step and that's okay, but you just
Yeah.
have to keep going forward, right? If you want to get to that end goal, which I think for a majority of us is peace.
Yeah, definitely. And how long do you reckon after your relationship ended before you could say, yeah, I've found some peace with myself? Because we're always working on things.
Yeah, I think I'm still searching. Yeah, I mean, definitely life is more peaceful. And that's not to blame anyone or point fingers at anyone. It's just that I'm able to now trust my process and trust myself and my intuition and know that this is the right journey. And I think, you know, I definitely live with peace now and I definitely have found inner peace, but I think it's an ongoing journey, just like, healing is an ongoing journey. So I'm constantly striving and moving forward to see how much more peace I can bring into my life, right?
Yeah, definitely. And when you look back now from where you are to where you were, how different of a person do you think you are?
I think there's a big difference for the positive. I know back then being in an unhealthy relationship, and I know a lot of people can relate to this. It was not great. I was not the best version of myself, that's for sure. I was very negative. It's like a very dark time. I was displaying toxic behaviors and patterns. I was angry and resentful. So waking up every single morning feeling unfulfilled, feeling sad, angry, resentful, feeling like I'm the victim, constantly looking at everyone else saying, why me? Why me? Why me? Why can't I have that life?
Yeah.
So that's definitely not my state of mind at this point, and it takes time to get to that. But when you do, like you said, like you look back and you're like, wow, what a difference.
Did you know the reasons why you were unhappy at the time in the relationship, or did you just think, I'm unhappy? Could you not put your finger on it, or did you always know?
I didn't know. I think there was a lot of confusion. So in the moment, if I think back to specific parts of my marriage, like I said, it was easy to blame others, right? It was easy to blame my partner for how miserable I was, how unhappy I was. But it wasn't until afterwards, until we separated, that I was able to actually do some inner child healing, but also look inwards. Like, well, first of all, figure out, Angie, what makes you happy? What are your passions? What are your values? I had to really look at all these things because none of it was in alignment. So I think if you want to truly align to who you are, first discover who you are and then follow through on fulfilling those, I guess you could say, values or tools or, whatever it is that that really makes you who you are? And that's a big question because a lot of people will say, like, I don't know who I am anymore, right? Like after
You lose
you lose you, and especially after you have kids and stuff, right? You just get so busy and you go into autopilot. So yeah.